Hey everyone, Ripley Sellers with Bob's Watches. I'm here in the studio with Justin for another episode of Vintage of the Week, where we pull aside one remarkable vintage timepiece and share with you exactly why we love it.
We got an interesting GMT today, right?
Really cool GMT. Real quick, what are you wearing?
Oh, wrist check. Stainless steel Datejust, just simple in the best meaning possible. Classic smooth bezel. I love it.
Yeah, all day, every day.
Yeah.
Could be the only watch you'd ever need.
Yeah, I've said it before, I'm not a one-watch guy, but if you twisted my arm, this is something similar to this is what would end up on my wrist.
And an underrated model in Rolex's catalog. Always focus on the sports watches, but yeah, standard all steel, smooth bezel Datejust.
It's clean,
super,
beautiful.
Yeah, super versatile.
What do you got on today?
My Speedmaster, classic.
Great choice.
Yeah, tried and true.
Yeah.
Can't ever go wrong
Can't
with a
go
good
wrong.
watch.
Yeah, never get tired of it. Yeah. Well, we got a GMT today, right? Something special. We have the first two-tone GMT offered by Rolex, correct?
Yeah, 1675,
Yep.
So it's the second generation of them, but the first one where it really started to take on its form. Case grew to 40 mil, got crown guards, all of that. The 1675 itself first debuted in 59, but in steel, and they had the solid gold one. The two-tone variety, the 1675/3, didn't come along until about 1970, early 70s. And then at that point, we get a very different watch than what we're used to. Instead of just being solid gold with a brown dial and bezel, you still have a brown dial, but you get a two-tone case with 14 karat gold, and then you get a matte brown nipple dial with a split color brown and gold insert. So 70s.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It just screams 70s. I love this watch. I love that it's such a deviation from what it was before, right? Like you said, we've had the stainless, and then we've had gold, and they had the the colored bezels, but nothing like this. Nothing like this gold and brown and tan, and it's so outside the box for when it was released that I love it. It was different and special, and I think it's kind of carried that through time all the way up until now. We have the kind of re-release, I guess, and maybe a name only of the root beer GMT, which personally I don't really think it's a root beer. I mean, I know it's kind of called the root beer, but to me this is the true root beer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The new watch, I get it why they call it the root beer, but when the bezel's different, the dial color's different, the type of gold's different.
Right.
I mean, it's a very different watch. And we always like to talk about Rolex makes kind of these timeless pieces where you can look at a sub from the 60s and it still kind of holds up today. Obviously, it looks like an older watch, but this is one of the rare instances of Rolex making something that's very grounded in a past era.
Yes.
Matte brown dial, brown and gold bezel. Like, put this right along with like T-tops and like a shag carpet.
Yeah.
This is so 70s, and they also continue to produce this colorway outside of the 70s as well. But this really represents the start of the two-tone GMT.
This was like the initiation. This is when it first landed, and it shows, like you said, it's like a snapshot right out of time, out of the 70s, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and super unique too. We're used to kind of seeing the all brown bezel more with the brown dial on like the solid gold models. And I think we're very used to seeing black dials and GMTs across all different colorways and metal types. But brown dial, brown and gold bezel, gold and steel case, there's a lot going on there. And in this particular example, really honest condition. Clearly someone wore this. This particular one's from approximately 1978, so kind of in the last few years that they were doing this particular style before they updated it to the 16753.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it's just really unique. There's a lot of, we talk about the colorway, right? We talk about the bezel and the dial. I mean, that right off the bat. But on top of that, it has the nipple dial, which has its own unique look. Even we go to the bracelet. Like, this has the oval link bracelet, which is, I mean, that, to me, that just screams vintage. It screams that 70s style, that look. It's really just a nice, another little detail that kind of makes this watch what it is and really gives it its own personality.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just count the things that are things Rolex doesn't do anymore. GMT-Master as a whole, they don't do that. It's all going to be GMT-Master 2. Acrylic crystals, you're not going to get an aluminum bezel, certainly not going to have oval link Jubilee bracelet, or even anything in 14 karat gold. No brown dial, no tritium dial. I mean, like, this is so unique compared to their current catalog. Really a snapshot in time, but also if you had a whole collection of different Rolex sports watches, this does stand out.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had an all-black steel GMT with a black bezel and you had a vintage sub from the same era, at a glance, there's some visual similarities, even though they're very different watches. there's nothing in the sub lineup that has a two-tone
Yeah.
brown,
Yeah.
unless it's a super tropical dial or something. But you know, this is very much a look that's unique to the GMT-Master collection.
Yeah.
Didn't exist in the subs. They weren't doing brown dial Daytonas with gold bezels, you know.
Sure.
So it's something that is inherently of the GMT, very much tethered to the era, and just really, really cool. If you like vintage watches, this one just looks vintage. It looks old.
Yeah, and it's, you know, like you said, it's on its own. I mean, this could live in your watch box full of GMT Masters and not be similar to any of them, right? It's completely on its own, which I really like about that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the solid stainless steel, Pepsi colorway on the bezel. I mean, it's just so classic. I love those, but it's just something unique. It's something different, and it lives all on its own, and I really like that about it.
Yeah, and even this one's a bit unique compared to later generations of the brown dial, brown and gold bezel root beer. If you notice, this is a matte brown nipple dial. So if you're looking at like the GMT2 varieties that kind of embrace this colorway, you're going to have like a sunburst brown dial, applied gold filled markers. Looks a lot more modern. This really kind of like something about a matte brown dial to me is just so retro.
And it's fitting because this is the one that started it all.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, you can't get a yellow gold GMT anymore, or a yellow gold two-tone.
Right.
It's all in the Everose category. So even if that alone, it kind of makes it a bit special. And as the very first two-tone GMT, got to give it a nod to that.
Yeah, this one's it's beautiful. And like you said, nice, honest watch. You can tell that it's been worn, but it absolutely hasn't been abused. It's got a really nice color to the bezel. These things fade sometimes. I think they fade too much. I mean, I know that's a very personal preference, but for me, I really like it kind of in the spot where it is right now. You can tell it has some age to it, but you can still read it. It doesn't look, it's not too thin. It's not really beat up. Just a really nice example.
Yeah, that's a good point. Without a dark color like black or deep blue or something like that, sometimes these so they fade really interesting, but sometimes they do wash out a bit too much. Great shape on this, very much of the vibe, and I mean, if you're looking for a two-tone root beer, I would want the first one.
Yes.
I'd want the first one. Or I'd want to go the total opposite direction, get the modern one, but like, again, if you're looking for the vintage root beer, 1675 is the obvious
This is the one for me, absolutely. And we haven't mentioned, this watch actually is for sale, right? All these are watches that we have listed on our site. So if you're looking for a great GMT, root beer, like you said, one of the first ones to start it off, give this one a look. It's a great example.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Vintage of the Week. Absolutely glorious two-tone GMT-Master root beer, reference 1675/3 from approximately 1978. Don't forget to tune in next time for another episode of Vintage of the Week and see what we have for you then.